Sofia Caval, Florida, May 23, 2024. The crime: beating 9-year-old grandmother to death with her bare hands. Caval made history as one of the youngest to face adult charges for killing a family member. Her chilling statement haunting investigators. She was already dying. I helped her die. Sofia Caval was supposed to be a success story. Imagine a 4-year-old girl, not long removed from a war-torn homeland, standing over the lifeless body of the grandmother who once carried her through bomb shelters. A child who fled Ukraine seeking safety in America only to bring unimaginable violence into the very home meant to save her. In just 90 minutes behind a closed apartment door, Sofia Caval transformed from a grieving refugee into one of Florida's youngest killers, beating her 9-year-old grandmother to death with nothing but her bare hands. But what stunned investigators even more than the brutality of the attack was the chilling calm that followed. When asked why she killed the woman who raised her, Sofia didn't cry, didn't tremble, didn't hesitate. She simply said,
I helped
almost
her
casually,
die.
She was already dying. I helped her die. A sentence that would haunt detectives, prosecutors, and an entire community forever. Sofia Caval was born in 2010 Ukraine, a country already shadowed by political tension and, eventually, full-scale war. Her earliest memories were shaped not by childhood innocence but by the distant echoes of explosions, hurried evacuations, and the constant fear that tomorrow might bring new devastation. When the Russian invasion intensified, Sofia's father made a desperate decision: to flee the country with his daughter and aging mother, hoping the United States would offer the stability and safety their homeland could no longer provide. They resettled in Florida, joining thousands of Ukrainian refugees attempting to rebuild their lives from nothing. To the outside world, Sofia appeared to adjust, attending school, learning English, and living quietly with her father and grandmother. But beneath that fragile new beginning, troubling signs began to surface. Sofia's behavior grew unpredictable, defiant, and increasingly volatile. Teachers noticed emotional withdrawal. Her father noticed sudden bursts of anger and fixation on her cell phone as a coping mechanism. When her father finally confiscated the device in an attempt to discipline her, he believed he was taking a necessary parental step. Instead, that moment became the spark that ignited the darkest chapter of their family's life. On the night of the 23rd of May 2024, the Caval apartment in Lauderdale Lakes appeared calm, at least on the surface. Sofia's father stepped out briefly to visit a friend, leaving his 4-year-old daughter alone with her 9-year-old grandmother, Yevhenia. It was a routine decision he had made countless times before, trusting that the elderly woman who had survived wars, purges, and decades of hardship could safely watch over his child. But within minutes of his departure, something inside Sofia snapped. Enraged by the earlier conflict over her confiscated phone and simmering with months, perhaps years of unaddressed emotional turmoil, Sofia unleashed a violent outburst with no warning and no mercy. With only her bare hands, she began striking her grandmother again and again, punching, kicking, stomping. Her attack continued not for seconds or minutes, but for an excruciating hour and a half. By the time it ended, Yevhenia's body was covered in severe bruises, internal injuries, and blunt force trauma that no elderly person could survive. When Sofia's father returned home around 12:30 a.m., he found a scene that defied comprehension. His mother lay lifeless on the floor. Sofia stood nearby, disturbingly calm, showing no panic, no regret, and no understanding of the horror she had just committed. In shock, he called emergency services, struggling to process the reality that the woman who had survived some of the darkest chapters of European history had died violently inside her own home. Sofia, standing nearby, displayed no visible distress. Her expression was flat, her posture relaxed, an emotional void that immediately unsettled first responders. As detectives began questioning the 4-year-old, her responses raised even more red flags. She offered conflicting accounts of what happened, shifting details, retracting statements, then offering new ones, all while maintaining an eerie calmness. There were no tears, no panic, no signs of fear, just an unnerving detachment from the gravity of the situation. Investigators, seasoned in dealing with juvenile offenders, were stunned by her demeanor. Then came the statement that froze the room. She was already dying. I helped her die. Delivered with a matter-of-fact tone, it was less a confession than a chilling window into Sofia's distorted reasoning. For detectives, that sentence marked the moment the case shifted from a tragic accident to a deliberate, violent homicide committed by a child. Sofia Caval's case moved through the Florida court system with unusual speed, largely because of the overwhelming evidence and the shocking brutality involved. Although she was only 14 years old at the time of the killing, prosecutors made the rare decision to charge her as an adult, a step typically reserved for the most violent and aggravated offenses. The reasoning was clear. The victim was an elderly woman, physically defenseless, and the attack itself was prolonged, savage, and entirely one-sided. Under Florida law, such circumstances elevate a juvenile homicide far beyond the scope of traditional juvenile court. In the courtroom, Sofia appeared small and soft-spoken, but the details of her actions painted a far more disturbing picture. Prosecutors emphasized the 90-minute duration of the assault, her emotional detachment afterward, and her now infamous statement, "I helped her die." The defense attempted to attribute her behavior to trauma from war and displacement, arguing that unaddressed psychological injuries played a role in her violent outburst. But despite these arguments, the court ultimately concluded that the severity of the crime could not be excused by her circumstances. Sofia was convicted of second-degree murder, a charge reflecting both the intentional brutality of the attack and the absence of premeditation. In the end, the court delivered a sentence that stunned many observers. Despite being charged as an adult and convicted of second-degree murder, Sofia Koval received a punishment far lighter than most expected for such a brutal act. 3 years in juvenile detention, followed by mandatory deportation back to Ukraine upon her release. Because she was still legally a minor, Florida law restricted how long she could be confined in a juvenile facility, meaning that, at just 17 years old, she will walk out of detention and be sent across the world to a country still living under the shadow of war. For many in the community, the sentence felt shockingly lenient. How could a 90-minute beating that ended an elderly woman's life result in only 3 years behind bars? Victim advocates argued that the punishment failed to reflect the cruelty of the crime or the suffering of the victim. Others questioned whether deportation truly served justice or simply shifted the burden onto another nation. What do you think? Was this sentence fair? Or was it far too light for the severity of the crime? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into the most disturbing cases the justice system has ever faced.